Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you, take 15 at my hot take, I guess. I've been pretty squarely in the camp that the Tyranids infantry isn't as cost effective as we would like to believe comparatively. And it costs us more to do what other people do in for cheaper, basically. That's the crux of the argument, and I hope to kind of highlight what I mean by that. I'm not going to get out the damage graphs that you might see. That isn't a slight at anybody else. That's other people's things, but I'm going to be highlighting some of the issues and hopefully some of the logic follows through without necessarily needing to go into the calculations of in average world average thing meets average thing, we go to there. I want to hopefully break down exactly what I mean by our infantry is kind of overcosted, and that's why you see some of our staple units everywhere. It's not necessarily because they're just so busted. They're around the same as other people's equivalent things. Our tanks are equivalent to other people's tanks. Um, we have one that's good at shooting infantry, one that's good at shooting kind of heavier infantry, and our tank buster is good at shooting tanks. But our infantry is lacking at trying to do more than that because, or do effectively the infantry role for a number of reasons that hopefully this will make sense. I've attempted this from several different angles. Haven't been quite pleased with some of the fumblings I've made, so I'm going to try to make this as clear as possible, and hopefully this is the recording that makes the most sense. So, let's go. Tyranid Warriors with melee bioweapons is the focus of today's discussion. They have reroll hit rolls of 1 or reroll saving throws of 1 at the start of the fight phase. You get to pick one of those two. We all go for reroll hit rolls of 1. They can be led by the Winged Tyranid Prime to give them sustained. They are T5, 4 up save, 3 wounds a pop. They're a topic of discussion recently because of Warrior Bioform Onslaught, and I've just been talking about them for a while, into which you will find them to be useful in things like Invasion Fleet and Synaptic Nexus, where you can boost their survivability and in some ways their damage as well, right? For both of those. However, I'm critical of them outside of those points. It shouldn't necessarily take a detachment for them to start doing, I guess, their job. I want detachments to make things better, not equal. If that's the best way I could put it on that one. So what do I mean by that? So they do have Tyranid Warrior Claws and Talons that are twin linked. They are 6 attacks per model, hitting on 3, strength 5, AP 2, damage 1. Each Tyranid Warrior with melee bioweapons, before you attach a Winged Tyranid Prime, for 25 points a model, is capable of doing 6 damage at most. At most, each one can do 6 damage. You take that into a squad, at most, they can do 18 damage. That doesn't sound too bad itself, but it's the way at which it has to deliver that damage that you start to find an issue with. I also want to go over necessarily caps at damage, into which you start finding that you are paying attacks before you are paying attacks because you are more likely to get the damage through, but also not at the same time. What do I mean by all of this? Well, with the melee, we've already talked about each one could do a max of 6, and it's more likely that you get around 6. You still have to hit on 3s, and for most of the time, you're wounding on 3s and 4s. Sometimes, even 5s. But just because it's twin linked doesn't magically mean you no longer roll 1s and 2s, unfortunately. You get that reroll into a reroll, and you are sad. Well, let's talk about the ranged bioweapon warriors. They hit on fours with their range, but they still hit on threes in combat. They don't have twin linked, they don't have rerolls. They have one less attack and one less AP. Each model has the potential in melee alone to do 5 damage. And then, depending on your selection of gun, some more damage there. What they have is this unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn at which it fell back. So, outside of advancing, you have the movement to do more damage. And you get the opportunity to do damage at ranges. So, why am I bringing this up and saying that they're not effective as melee version? Well, it's a bit odd that the one that can do the most damage, theoretically speaking, is cheaper by 10 whole points. This is a squad of Hormagaunts right here. And that's something I'm willing to pay. A squad of Hormagaunts worth for 3 quote unquote elite models. Maybe not elite, but advanced models. I'm willing to pay that. Before I have to pay another 65 for that damage to start to be damage. Okay? Over here, I am paying 75 for the likelihood to get around 6 damage per model squeezed out. Still not too bad. Right? Right. The problem comes in to which I am paying an additional 10 points because it's more likely that once I finally get to combat, I am doing around my designated 6 damage, and because there's the possibility of sustained, I am paying more, into which it is more likely for me to do more than 6 damage. Compared to over here, I am not too likely to get the ceiling of damage out of the same one because I don't have rerolls. I just have to go for it. But at the same time, with Blast, weapon profiles, I still can have additional shots that have the chance to give me more damage. So again, it's still weird that the ranged bioweapons have less cost and potentially more damage. Why does this begin to matter? And why do I necessarily take, I don't want to say issue with it, but it's just that, because again, I want to put this here in this part of the video because I often see where people stop listening in the video and started commenting about what I said or whatever it is, where they not necessarily disagree with something, they just think they disagree with something I said. I don't hate warriors. I don't hate the melee warriors. I just wish they did more for their points. I like them in Synaptic Nexus. I like them in Invasion Fleet. They do their job there. They have access to staying alive to continue to do it, and that's where I want my points to execute their points. I want my 25 point model to do around 25 point model damage. That's what I want out of them. So, going back to the breakdown, melee warriors are costed more because there is a higher chance for you to achieve higher damage because you have the rerolls. So, going back into this one more time, higher potential, higher likelihood. Now, let's think for a second about what I mean by the damage being inefficient, okay? Or I'm saying the damage is inefficient, and what do I necessarily mean by that? Each warrior, each three wound warrior, when faced with a 1 wound model, will kill it in 1 successful attack. Meaning I hit at least on 3s, and I wound it probably at least on 3s, right? Now, there is the option of 3 wound targets that are, toughness 3 targets that I am now wounding on 2s and re-rolling. But again, I ask, if they are already toughness 3, did I really need a 75 to 150 to 215 point unit of 7 models to take out toughness 3 and an army that eats infantry alive? Between ranged and melee, do I need that? But going back into it, each 1 wound model dies per attack out of my melee warrior. Each 2 wound model requires my model to make a third of its attacks to kill that model. That means that I need to hit, I need to wound, they need to fail. Then we go into fellow 3 wound models. Each warrior outside of a winged Tyranid Prime being attached for 75 points, I need to make half of my attacks per model to kill a fellow model, fellow 3 wound model. Have to hit, can't be 1s and 2s. 1s and 2s is 1/3 of the chance, so you have a 33% chance to fail the hit. Then this goes up to toughness 6 because of synapse. If I am going against a fellow toughness 5 model, I'm wounding on 3s. Once more, I have a 33% chance to fail at that step. And then, let's just say that they also have a 4-up save, no invuln, right? Same as us, right? You're just going warrior into warrior, fuck it. Then, they are saving on 6s. Now, that is better. They have a 1 in 6 chance to pass, 5 in 6 chances to fail. However, that means there was, sorry, I wasn't a math major, so I'm not going to necessarily get the actual stats out. But there was a third of a chance for me to fail to hit, a third of a chance for me to fail to wound, and 1/6 of a chance for them to survive past that. For 1 damage. See how that works? That was per attack. So you have to do that several times over, and to which the sustained, while it is a damage boost, it is more of a cover your ass boost than anything, right? So you do that enough times to hopefully get 3 pieces of damage down to kill a wound like that. And then if we start talking about any model, any unit that has 4 or 5 wound models, you also have to do that again, into which you are now 4 out of my 6 attacks have to hit, go through, and be failed to save for 4 damage to come through. So, am I advocating for Tyranid warriors with melee bioweapons to go up to damage 2? While that would be nice, I think that would start to lean to punching up too high. However, I think one thing that a lot of other units have is that their in-squad captain has either access to a different weapon or different damage. I think the Tyranid Prime out of the unit should have access to damage 2 before we get to the Winged Tyranid Prime that needs to be attached. That then opens it up into which maybe just your Tyranid Prime has 6 attacks and can deliver 12 damage to bolster the unit's damage output without necessarily making it absurd. I would also like to make this comment now before I forget. The AP2, I'm going to say something that's fucking insane to think about, okay? But a lot of the targets into which you are delivering these attacks into don't give a shit about the AP2. They don't. A lot of them have invuln saves that are pretty safe. You will be putting them on that invuln, but at the end of the day, if you have, not to say that these are equivalent, but just for the volume part, let's think about it here. So before anybody goes, that doesn't work that way. If I take a squad of 10 Barbgants for 110 points, okay, and they have 10 D6 shots, 60 shots going into it. They have AP 0 though. They are still damage 1. They are strength 5. Now, that is less than the strength 6 because of synapse. But if I dump that into a vehicle that has, let's go with a 3 up save, put it right in the middle, right? They are bound to fail in about the same scheme that me putting a bunch of these attacks are bound to fail. Now, I still have to wound that vehicle, right? I already have the volume, per se. With 10d6, let's take it on the average. We got about 40 shots in there. With 6 models, I have at least 36. And let's get some sustain in there. Let's bump that up to 48. Okay? Still have to go through the hit and the wound and then the saves. But if we're talking about something that has a 3 up save, a 4 up invuln, that stops on 4s, and then my warriors are doing the same damage as my barbgons because it is still damage 1. That's what I mean by, at some points, it doesn't make a difference if you're just going for volume of attacks when you don't have any other thing going behind it when the AP goes out the fucking window at a certain point. But that is strictly hyperbole and what I mean by going through volume of attacks. The AP does matter sometimes, but I'm going to pull up, as you see, a lot of data sheets, and I promise I wasn't necessarily trying to cherry pick. I mean, I guess technically I was trying to put things that are equivalent around to the Warriors and how they would fare and what they have to help them in combat that the Warriors don't technically have. And a few other things that are of note. So, going from there, so I can further illustrate necessarily why -2 AP is nice to look at. But if there's only 1 damage delivered, does it give a fuck? Right? So let's go on. Let's go to the Blade Guard Veteran Squad. Has the same rules as the Melee Warriors. They have 1 less toughness, a better save. The invuln is where we start. Okay? 3 wounds. Reroll hits of 1. Or, if you're taking on the invuln, you reroll your saving throw. So let's talk about this for a second and why that already starts to matter. Okay? They have an invuln, which is 4. So no matter what happens to them, no matter what AP goes into them, it stops at 4. Their saves over here at the Warriors starts at 4. So that means any random lucky ass shot that something from like Barbgons does. Well, okay, they do wound this on 4. So let's go Termagants, okay? With the Twin Linked Spine Fist. That's strength 3. You get something like that, AP 0. Yeah, you can start saving this on 3s if we're talking about cover. But mano y mano, in combat, pistol, using that part, 4 up save. Every lucky shot out of a Termagant means that you have to roll a 4 up. You have a 50% chance of failing to taking 1 damage out of your 3 wounds per model. Every lucky shot means a third of your model is gone. Do we understand what I mean by what the fuck? That's step number 1. Step number 2, you go to the cost per model. Alright? Blade Guard Vet, 90 compared to 75. Sea Monster is cheaper, you shouldn't be bitching. Let's also look at some other things. So for 5 more points per model, I have an invulnerable save. That can be re-rolled if that's what I need that time. I have a gun. Gun means, even though it is a low volume of shots, between these 3 models, 3 shots are being fired. I still can gun before that happens. And the melee weapons, while there are less attacks, we're hitting on the same, the strength is technically lower, because with Synapse we get pushed to 6, the AP is the same, but as you can see, step number 1 of my issue, damage is already 2. So what does that mean? These are 3 wound models. Yeah, we have an easier time of wounding them, we will be wounding them on 3s. Now, wounding on 3s, again, 1/3 chance to fuck it up out of hitting because we hit on 3s, 1/3 chance per attack to fuck up wounding. Okay? Then it takes 3 of our attacks to go through that entire process, no save, 4-up save, 50% chance for them to pass it, for them to take 1 out of their 3 wounds from our attacks. Okay? 3 of our attacks need to go through for that to kill 1 Blade Guard vet. However, on the flip side, they have 4 attacks per model, hitting on 3s, no twin linked, so the wounds don't need to worry about that, but they will be wounding us on 4s. So again, the same 50% chance in one way, right? However, the AP is 2. We don't have an invulnerable save outside of Warrior Bioform Onslaught and technically Synaptic Nexus, which I do like to tote, okay? So that means we are now saving on 6s and damage 2. So that means that every 2 attacks that goes through from the Blade Guard vets kills a model and a half of the warriors. Well, a model and a third, excuse me. Not a half, model and a third. Math failed me there for a second. For every 2 of their attacks, half of their attacks will kill 1.5 models. Half of our attacks will kill exactly 1 model. 1 1/3. Did I say 1.5 again? Will exactly kill 1 of the models. They still have access to reroll hits. The other problem is they get a save of a 4 flat. We start saving at 6s here. There's a 5 out of 6 chance for you to fuck that up with every hit and wound that has gone through. Yes, the wound is on 4s. They have a 50-50 to get that right, and out of just, without captains, 12 attacks, or without leaders, 12 attacks. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2. Things that are on the Blade Guard Vet Squad. Has grenades. Grenades is not a keyword that Tyranids get. Therefore, even if we wanted to do chip damage before this fight goes, you have gun, you have grenades. To start taking out something like the melee warriors, which have to get there on foot. They have 6-inch move, yeah, you can do a little bit of leapfrogging with the Winged Tyranid Prime. But if you want to deliver them out of a vehicle, here's your options. The Tyrannocyte, not the Harridan, and the Hierophant. However, you can't take the Winged Tyranid Prime for the squad, assuming you go max. If you do the Hierophant, because you can't take any models with fly, and that exceeds the transport capacity for the Tyrannocyte. An 105 point model, by the way. That's a dropship. Now, we look over at the Blade Guard Veteran Squad. It is a Tacticus model. So one error that I made in a previous attempt at recording this is I said the Rhino. I was like, well, yeah. You see, the other thing is, yeah, it's 5 points more per model, but they have grenades, they have an infone, and they have a delivery method that's cheap in the Rhino. Into which, something else reminded me that Tacticus models cannot go in Rhinos. So you go, Sea Monster, shut the fuck up. You know what I'm talking about. You can still put them in an Impulsor for 80. For 5 more points, once again, they can transport Tacticus models. And then, the Impulsor is an assault vehicle. Units can disembark from this transport after it has advanced. Units that do so count as having a normal move and cannot declare a charge that turn. So, it also has Firing Dex 6. It is a T9, 3 of save, 11 wound. It's nice. So while you have to start paying 65 points to do some of your damage for these 3 models, for another 15 points, you could just have an entire vehicle. Meanwhile, the Tyrannocyte is 25 points more than an Impulsor. So how do you deliver these things effectively, not take any damage on the way there, to then do their maximum amount of potential damage? And let's also talk about that for a second. The other thing with that is, if you fail a charge, you're fucked. You spent 215 points for a unit that is now probably out in the open, looking stupid because you failed your charge. Yeah, it was only a 3-inch charge, but fuck, you rolled Snake Eyes and I'm out of CP. That happens. That's 215 points down the drain. Then you also have, once again, you just can't put it anywhere. They have 50 millimeter bases. They have to walk up and out the long way. They have to get there somehow. They can get overwatched because they're walking there. Somebody could heroic intervene. You could get interrupted. Everything can go wrong for the Tyranid warriors with melee bioweapons. And once you do finally get your charge off, you still have to get enough models into combat to utilize them. So while we are calculating for max damage, in an ideal world where all of your models were able to pile into an imposing unit and fight, there is the very real option of, with your 50 millimeter bases, and I'll be honest, usually I never talk about base size this deep, but it is really funny because of Warrior Bioform Onslaught. People are finding out how much you can't necessarily just field on the fucking field because of these fuckers. Um, you do have to worry about getting all of them into engagement range for combat. So sometimes you may only have 3 of them able in, even though your entire unit is alive. So you've paid 215, only 3 of them are eligible to fight, and at that point you are making up for lost damage out of the other 3 models not being around. So that's the weakness of them also being a melee only unit. They don't have a delivery system, and once they get there, the damage still isn't guaranteed. So that's why, not again, several people have done graphs and breakdowns. I don't want you to have one person in mind and be like, wow, he's talking about that person. No, several people have done it. Everybody's done it. Okay? Keep that in mind. This is what I mean by the fact that while it's nice to look at the damage potential and the probability and likelihood of the averages of Tyranid warriors, a lot of people think is just looking at data sheets. So let's also think about the reality into which they get there safely, nothing happens to them, and they get to do it. They have a 4-up save to start at the current point in time. I do want to once again put it here that maybe the balanced data slate quote unquote fixes them. Maybe they go to a 2-up save, and then they truly are cheap Terminators without Deep Strike. Fine, I'll take that. But for right now, they have a 4-up save. That means you are already failing 50% of the dice that you roll for these fuckers to stay alive. But that's the Impulsor. Still firing dex 6, so things can be fired and they have their own gun. For 15 points more than just attaching your leader to that unit. Let's look at other ones. The Repentia Squad. T3, 3-up save, 6-up invuln because they're sisters, 1 wound a pop. 5-up feel no pain, 90 points for 5 models. While this unit contains a Repentia Superior model, each time a sister's Repentia model in that unit makes a melee attack, you can reroll the hit roll and you can reroll the wound roll. So, close enough to the same thing. But if you look here, they come with sustained along with those rerolls that is attached to the Repentia Superior being in here. Once again, we have grenades. We have an invulnerable save that no matter what happens, you will have a save. Once you get into any amount of AP3, if something goes awry, or they increase your save in somehow, some way, can't think of one off the top of my head that they could do that. Either way, AP3 means you no longer get a save on your melee warriors. Repentia, Blade Guard Vets, you will always have a save because it's invulnerable. You go to the Penitent Inviscerator, Sustained Hits 1, all of them have it, okay? 2 attacks hitting on 4s, strength 6, same strength, same AP of 2, but once again, damage 2. For 5 models, you go there. And then we go to the efficiency part. Yeah, every one of my melee warriors attacks that goes through will kill a Sister Repentia. But did I need my melee warriors to take out 1 wound models? That's the thing that they're best at hitting. But do I need my semi-elite unit to take out something like this, which is 90 points for 5 models? They have damage too, they have sustained. And then the Repentia Superior has anti-infantry 4 up. So for 4 attacks, hitting on 3, strength 3, doesn't really matter on the strength part because we have anti-infantry 4 up, AP 1, damage 1. So where we would normally be asking for you to roll 6s to wound, the 4s still come through. So yeah, that's where you have the same quote-unquote damage there, but also has a bolt pistol. Not the biggest thing, but also, once again, some amount of a ranged wound that can just find itself causing us to be down where we didn't need to be out, while still having grenades. And a 5 up feel no pain on top of everything. So, while damage is going through, they can still be rolling for about 33% chance to not feel the pain. Go to another one, Arcoflagellants. We have, again, 5 up feel no pain, all melee, sustained hits 1 standard. Each time this unit is selected to fight, you can choose to invoke its extremist trigger word. If you do, then until the end of phase, Arcoflagellants equipped by models in this unit have an attack characteristic of 6 and the hazardous ability. 45 points for 3 models. 10 is 150. But still, they are T3, 6 up invuln. Now I will give that everything is an invuln. 2 wounds a pop. Sustained hits 1, but they can go up to 6 attacks for sustained hits 1 with the same damage of us, technically less strength, much less AP. So, going into us, 6 attacks at damage 1, half of their attacks that go through while they also have sustained will kill a warrior. Now, there's no rerolls, but hey, that's what we start to go. And I'm going across several factions, so if you think that one's not too fair, I tried to look at the best melee combatants for this. Maybe if we go with the Paragon Warsuits, but that's like not fair. They are 3 model groups, but it just didn't seem fair. So I go that. Then we go over to Chaos Demons, into which unfortunately they don't have real infantry outside of their battle line. So we'll kind of knock out the points per model situation, but even the battle line are rocking AP2, damage 2, and reroll wound rolls of 1, and if that attack targets a unit that is below half strength, the entire reroll of the wound roll, so twin linked. T4, 5 up save, 1 wound a pop. They have an invuln. As battle line, even though that's the whole like demon thing, I'm just again pointing out they have an invuln. They have to save whatever on 5s. Meanwhile, whatever they lucky shot us, we're saving on 6s because we don't have an invuln outside of 1.2 to 1.5 detachments. Oh, not point. 1.5 detachments because one straight up gives it and the other one is like per turn or if you dedicate it. That's what I mean. Also have deep strike. Demons have deep strike. Don't let that weigh too much on this conversation. But again, they just have other methods of getting there. Same with Demoness, just to go on the flip side of rerolling wounds, we have rerolling hits, and they have dev wounds. That also goes into it. They also have +1 to charge. I forgot to mention with Instruments of Chaos, they can have a better charge while having comparable movement or straight up better movement and still having an invuln save. So, moving on from there, let's go to Chaos for another T5 model, 25 points per model unit. We're going to the Havocs. save of a 3, a better save once more, less wounds. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack with a ranged weapon, you can ignore mods for the hit roll or ballistic skill. So we are finding ourselves talking about a ranged unit primarily, but even then, their melee weapons, their champion gets access to a damage 2, which offsets whatever might happen here. So yeah, while the accursed weapon is 5-2-1 just like us, 2 less attacks than us, same weapon skill, they do still have a champion that, if things get ducky, for 25 points a model, can punch somebody in the face. And the other thing is that, well, it's about who gets into who first. Yeah, they have a 5-inch move, but I can overwatch, once again, the warriors on their way up here. These can go into a rhino, right? I'm not gonna, actually, yeah, let's just double check that one. Just because I didn't think to double check that one here. Yes, they can still go into a rhino for 75 points. Meanwhile, I'm spending 65 points to make up my damage, right? Now, are you going to leave Havocs or Blade Guard Vets without a leader? Probably not, but it's the fact that you can. You have no reason to be taking melee warriors if you don't. That's just the truth. Unless you are playing Invasion Fleet. That's the exception. So you have that option. And it's like, well, even then, they have an option to damage too. Possessed, another melee only unit, has better toughness, better save, has an invuln, 3 wounds even. We have better AP, better damage. Once per battle, when this unit makes a Dark Pact, which means either sustained or lethals to throw into the army rules into the mix. Until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by models in that unit have the Dev Wounds ability. So, and with Chaos Icon, you can reroll that Dark Pact ability. You can be looking at sustained Dev out of Possessed that, yeah, they are a bit more unfair when it comes to measuring the points per model. But even here, with a fellow melee only, you see that it doesn't stack up in the same degree. Yeah, you're putting them on the 5 up invuln, but still you are asking to make wound rolls of 4 to go through to get through these models. You go to the Scorpec Destroyers, another unit of 3 that is also, once again, like the Blade Garvets, 90 points. What's different here? T6, 3 up save, 3 wounds, reanimation protocols, 7-2-2 for 4 attacks, rerolling ones to hit, and if it's a charge, reroll the entire hit. So that means the 2s also go out, and a plasma site into once per battle for each plasma site. So for every 3 Scorpex Destroyers, you can tag on a plasma site. Once per battle, Dev Wounds. In fact, sometimes you might look to take the Scorpec Destroyers without the Scorpec Lord, because the Scorpec Lord gives lethals where it kind of screws over your Dev Wounds. And you go, what the fuck is going on here? So, they're even efficient outside of bringing their leader. Once per turn, they have devs with rerolling hits. Sorry, once per turn, once per battle. They can get devs rerolling hit rolls of 1 for more strength, same AP, more damage, yeah, less attacks, but the strength is 6. You're wounding them on 4s, they're wounding you on 3s. 3 up save. You put them to, they have a 5 up save, you have a 6 up save. What other things in Necrons could be comparable? You have the Lich Guard. That's more in line, right? You're looking at T5, slightly better save, less wounds. You even go that, hey, the Hyperphase Sword, if you go there, you have more attacks than them, same strength, same AP, same damage. Perfect. Well, let's go to another thing. If you do want to add the conversation of attaching characters, the Noble does the transhuman thing, the Terminator thing of, if the strength is greater than the toughness, reduce the wound roll by 1. So, while you would have been hitting and wounding on 3s, you are now back to 4s, if we do want to go that far. But also, because you're taking the Hyperphase Sword, you have access to a 4-up invulnerable save. So once again, your AP doesn't really matter, while theirs does for you. And if you don't take a 4-up invulnerable save, you have the War Scythe with Devastating Wounds, 2 attacks, Strength 8, AP 3, damage 2. Even if it's not a dev wound, it's a dev wound to you because you don't get a save with AP 3 and damage 2. So for 5 models, that's 10 attacks, damage 2, that's 20 damage. That will clear your 3 models that are 18 wounds, if it assuming it all goes through. But everyone that does is a dev wound to you. And then every time that you don't kill them, they have reanimation protocols to offset it. So meanwhile, you get +1 strength, but as we can see, it hasn't really found a way to be relevant for most of this, thanks to Synapse, unfortunately. Then you go to knobs. Another one where you do have the Terminator rule if you attach the one, but that's not what we're on here. They also have, once again, some war gear, just like the Scorpex, into which, yeah, the shooting isn't the best, but we're talking about random bullshit here. If you do have a bunch of sluggers for pistols so you can do that shit in combat, give them lethal hits. And again, every lucky shot, regardless of the fact that this shit is strength, I am now taking a save in pistol combat at saves of 4. Combi weapons are anti-infantry 4-up, dev wounds, rapid fire. Every lucky shot that leads to a wound of anti-infantry 4-up, that I don't even get to save it. It's just a third of my model gone. Meanwhile, they have access to melee weapons, once again. Strength 7, so wounding us on 3s. AP 1, putting us on 5s. Damage 2. And every 2 of my attacks kills 1 knob. Every 2 of their attacks, you got it, 1 and a third of the warriors. And if we do once again want to talk about attaching characters, yeah, the sustains will start pushing through on this. But at the same time, you are going back to wounding on 4, so half the chance to fail. And the war boss is +1 to hit in melee for the entire unit. So now they are hitting on 2s. And if it's the WA, well, fuck it, you already knew you lost because they have an invuln. If we want to involve army rules further. And once again, grenades. So while everybody else gets grenades, they get transports. Knobs can be in a truck to get delivered. Lich Guard and Scorpex, we already know about Hypercrypt Legion. They also have the option of the Night Scythe. Rhinos. Well, Possessed can't be in a Rhino. So that's a different one. Don't remember what all Possessed can be in. But we already did the Rhino for the Havocs. Demonettes and Bloodletters Deep Striking. The Sisters, several. Actually, no, Repentia can't be inside of Rhinos, right? Oh no, I lied. It can definitely take Repentia here. Can take Repentia. Can Immolators. Can take Repentia. Alright, so good things can take good things. Impulsor can take Blade Guard Vets. Meanwhile, you're just looking stupid without your fucking Tyrannocyte, maybe. Without your Winged Tyranid Prime. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Because the game hates us, right? So you are just made ineffective. You are throwing points at a wall and hoping that they stick for a lot of this. So then, going further, knobs, trucks, howling banshees, and striking scorpions. That's what we'll end off with some Eldar shenanigans, even though, yes, they are supposed to be good at melee. They have a 3-up save. I'm sorry, 3 wounds. So yeah, you'll be wounding them on 2s. They also have a 4-up invuln. So that 4-up save doesn't fucking move. So again, the AP goes useless. But in the case of Howling Banshees, they get another thing. They get to fight first and advance and charge. So not only did they have an 8-inch move to get there before you, had some weapons to plink off some wounds, they get fights first and advance and charge. So, as you can see, even other units that are starting to be comparable in the melee department, they have ways to advance and charge outside of needing an enhancement or one specific detachment. They have mobility in some other way. Warriors don't have the durability, they don't have the mobility. And that's where it gets to be weird. You look at the damage output, you even look at the one, you go, oh, the Banshee Blade. Alright, see, damage 1, AP 3, 3 attacks, and that is on the Exarch. That can go out and become the Triskill. 5 attacks, AP2, into which it's like, okay, fuck it. Banshee Blade, everybody else gets it. You can also have the Exarch go with a Shuriken Pistol and Mirror Swords. 6 attacks, AP3. These two things, every time it goes through, you just don't get a save. Outside of 1.5 detachments. That's just you taking shit on the fucking chin. And it's just unfortunate. While they have fights first. You go to Striking Scorpions, no more fights first. They have Infiltrate and a 7-inch move. And when you look at that, melee weapons equipped by the bearer have the devastating wounds ability when targeting units without monster or vehicle keyword. That can't be that bad, right? No, they also have sustain. So while they don't have rerolls, thank goodness they don't have rerolls, right? Thank goodness we have rerolls. They have sustained hits and death wounds without needing Karandras attached. With again damage 2. Who gives a fuck what the AP is if we're talking about sustained? I mean, sorry, death wounds. Yeah, the AP will come in handy on the shit that isn't, but for everyone that does, we're looking at 2/3 of our warrior out of it. So that's just where I mean by they are our one of our best melee units, quote unquote, but they still need help. Doesn't mean that they're quite good. I just want to highlight what at current I mean by saying that they are too expensive for what they do. I don't like spending 215 points, circle jerking back forth, this, that, way ever, to possibly get them in combat, pile in maybe 4 or 5 of the models to hopefully take out, let's be kind, and go fucking, yeah, let's just say that magically they kill a squad of Mega Nobs that have a 2-up save, so that means we put them on 4. Right? Let's say that we did that, even though it's wounding on 4s and they have a save of 4 and 3 wounds. Let's say we did something like that. Full squad of Mega Nobs attached to a Warboss in Mega Armor, right? It's 215 points for, again, a T6 model. And I don't know if you know this, but let's do one of these cheeky things. Okay? Let's do one of these. A lot of this list doesn't need to worry about trying to get rid of T6. It doesn't. For cheaper, it doesn't. I know it's drastically different things, but just because this one is B and is right here in my face, let's think, right? For 215 points and trying to get them into melee combat, for almost half of that, with Barb Guns at 110 for a squad of 10, 24 inches of range, I can have 10 D6 shots, strength 5, AP0, same damage of damage 1. Carnifexes, that's unfair. Gene Stealers, I also have grievances with. But just going down. Hive Guard are better than Hive Guard. We aren't taking Hive Guard for that reason. But even to something with the Lictor that I found this to be interesting. If your squad of 3 warriors, your MSU without a prime attached, again, 75 points into 60. I know everybody likes the Lictor, and I also have grievances with the Lictor. More so how much everybody relies on the Lictor, even though you don't need to. Good unit to have. Just don't need it as much as people think. The Lictor has fights first, infiltrating, lone up, and stealth. So while it doesn't have an invulnerable save, you can't shoot it outside of 12. And then once you do, you're -1 to hit. And because of the fights first, you have Lictor, Claws, and Talons Precision. Melee, strength 6. 6 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 7, AP2, damage 2. What did we learn about 2 and damage, AP2 and damage 2? That means every attack that goes through, because it will put us on sixes, is 2/3 of a warrior. And it has fights first and precision. So if this was a squad that had the Winged Tyranid Prime go into a lictor, it fights first, it precisions out the fucking warrior, does upwards to 12 damage, and then on the crackback for you, you no longer have sustained, you get the rerolls, but was it effective for you to do that into the lictor? Was it? Now let's go to the Winged Tyranid Prime. It does have 6 wounds, so it will take, whoopsie, 3 of those attacks to go through and do that. But again, we're going on 6s. So you've just lost your main damage boost if you just go into the lictor on the wrong fucking day. And you give the opponent a CP. And that's just thinking about one of them. I have become a fan of Von Ryan's Leapers lately. They are 5/4/3, just like the Warriors. They have an invuln save, they have fights first, they have infiltrate, they have stealth, free heroic intervention, 70 points for 3 models, 5/1/1, 6 attacks. So the only thing that's different is no AP, and there's no leader to give sustained, and there's no rerolls. That sounds like, did you just say only and list a lot of things? I did. But it's to be considered. Fights first, stealth, infiltrating, and heroic intervention at 10-inch movement. I've come to find that I like Von Ryan's Leapers a lot. Not to say that I am advocating for 140 point squads all the fucking time in place of wherever I would put warriors. No, I'm just saying for the task at hand, I often find that I'm enjoying throwing 70 points of Von Ryan's Leapers that way. Compared to hoping my melee warriors get, each model gets half of its attacks through to deal an equivalent amount of damage to an equivalent model, that is, right? Same damage capability, right? Same damage maximum without a leader, I should say. But going back to the whole maximum versus likelihood, yeah, it's more likely. But fuck. Still get info. So yeah, that's just my Warriors take. Melee Warriors take. What's the end result of this? Besides just, I don't know, being a petty bastard, is that I wish that the Tyranid Prime did something. I was having that conversation with Night Edge in the comments, into which it was just like, it'd be nice if the Tyranid Prime did something. If it was the way that you got damage 2 into this squad without needing to attach a Winged Tyranid Prime. If it gave you fights first while it was in the squad, devastating wounds while it's in the squad. And then you go, but devastating wounds, Broodlord. And then I'm like, well, but then I can attach sustained devastating wounds. And into the Broodlord Gene Stealer comment, you understand what I mean by why do I need to attach something that's more expensive than another MSU of my models to start doing effective damage. For again, damage 1. So yeah. I'm just saying, infantry and Tyranids could be better. That's why you see us bring more reliable shit in most of our list. But yeah, if you like the video, like it. Got a comment for me, comment. And until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.